JBR Podcast.
Wake up and check it out.
Where the music and life connects. Let's go.
So today I'm sitting down with a good friend and powerhouse in the blues scene, Nigel Mack. He's a killer harp player, guitarist, and singer. His blend of Chicago and Delta blues have taken him all over the world. We're going to dive into his journey, some of his wildest stories on the road, and what's kept his fire for the blues burning for all these years. And we appreciate you taking the time to be here, Nigel. So tell us how you got started in the music business.
I was kind of born into it.
Sure.
My mom was a singer and an actress, and my dad was a jazz fanatic. And when I was a little kid, I just took to listen to Miles Davis and all that sort of stuff in his collection, and I really dug on Count Basie. And then when the blues explosion in the 1960s happened, my dad kept on stopping by this little bookstore at the bottom of the office tower that he worked in, and he was a college professor, university professor at the University of Saskatchewan, and so he'd stop there and pick up some whatever cigarettes or whatever for the drive home, and then there was also a little record stand there, and he'd look through the records and he'd start bringing me home albums like brought me home Down Child Blues Band straight up. He brought me home Canned Heat, Johnny Winter's Still Alive and Well, Creedence Clearwater Revival, so he brought him into the Woodstock album. I got all these really cool gifts. So that really sparked a fire and in the blues for me. And Dad was quick to point out that the jazz of Count Basie, and all that was all based upon blues anyway. So then it just became, well, we're just going to go right to the roots here of this thing. So we started playing it.
Nice. And I see you got a guitar there. So what kind of guitar you got?
This is my 1929 National Steel. I have not owned her since new. And her nickname is Rusty because she's got rust spots on her. You can see right there. So that's how she got her her nickname. And I've had her since 2001. I found her at Willie's American Guitars in St. Paul, Minnesota. This is back before the internet. You couldn't just go online and order up a guitar. You had to actually hunt through all the records of the music stores and find these axes, like there was this great story. I was playing it in Saskatoon at Bud's on Broadway. And once upon a time, finding a resonator guitar, they're rare as hen's teeth. It was really hard to find them. And I found one, and it was an old like a Harmony or something like that. And it was at the Mother's Music in Saskatoon, and I took it back to Bud's, and I was upstairs there with the fellas digging on this guitar, and 5 minutes after I walked out of the door, this kid walked in with all this money and said, "I want to buy that guitar." And the guy at the store said, "Man, Nigel Mack just got it." I was like, "Oh, damn it!" So that's the way things were back in the olden days. And Rusty, I walked into Willie's American Guitars, and this guy had just traded her in and bought a brand new shiny one. So I said, "Wow, this is perfect for me." It's like it's all beat up and it, had a price tag I could afford.
That's awesome. I remember that place because I was touring with you probably not long before you bought that. And I remember going in there and the guitars in that place was just insane.
Yeah, those are some very special times and some very frustrating times at the same time because before I think that was the tour that we did. We were playing Memphis. And I can't remember if you're on that one or not. And we had one night in Memphis, and the next night we had 2 nights in. Or one night, I can't remember whatever it was in Nashville, and we got held up by an oil change place in Memphis. It took 2 hours to do a 20-minute oil change, and so we got to Nashville late. And I went into the next day. I went into Gruen's Guitars in Nashville, and there was a 1930 National Steel with a sold sign on it. And the guy said, "Yeah, we sold that, right before closing last night. So if I hadn't got delayed, if the band hadn't got delayed in Memphis, we would have made it to Nashville. I would have bought that guitar."
Wow.
But as it was, this is what happened. So I from frustrations, and sometimes you meet the right one little later on, So she's a great guitar. She's a lot of fun, and it's great to tell stories. And she tells stories too once I start to play her. So
Why don't you play us something?
say what?
Why don't you play us something if you're up
Okay.
for that?
I haven't really warmed up my voice or anything. I was just gonna do a little instrumental thing here. So let me just do this one here. This is the song, a tune that I copped off of David Lindley, the late great David Lindley, and he had this album called "Win This Record," and with his band El Rayo X. And at the very end, the tail end of the album, there's this little instrumental, and it's called "Look So Good." And so I was just gonna do that one right now because Rusty's
sounds
in the
good.
mood for that. So.
Very nice. I have
There's
no idea.
Rusty for you.
I have no idea what that's going to sound like on a podcast. You popped the live music cherry on the podcast there.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that. See,
Yeah,
I don't
totally.
know.
Yeah, no, that's good,
Cool,
man. That
man.
sounds
Cool.
nice. Sounds nice
I
with
had
my
no idea. I
headphones
don't know
on.
what to expect. It's my first podcast, so I'm, you're popping my podcast cherry already. So there you go.
So, yeah, tell us. Like I know you're from back east originally, but we met
No,
in
I'm from
Vancouver.
Saskatoon.
Well,
Well, I'm from
that's
Saskatoon originally.
yeah. Okay, I'm from BC, so
Yeah,
Saskatoon
there
is
you go.
back east to me.
Well, back east is usually like I always
Yeah,
thought
I
of
know.
back
Like
east as
yeah, like
Toronto.
Newfoundland or Toronto or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let
yeah,
me
yeah.
put this
Okay,
Rusty down here for a second.
sure. No worries. No worries.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm originally from Saskatoon, Toontown, home of the blues.
Yeah, yeah. Buds on Broadway in the Wash and Slosh. I remember that place was across the street.
The wash and slosh, for those who are not familiar, was a great idea. All these people had to go and do their laundry every week, and so they put the laundromat inside the bar. So boom,
I know they had weird pool tables and shit in there. It's like, yeah, what are you doing? I'm just doing the laundry, honey, getting smashed at the same time.
Yeah, no, it's
It's the
brilliant
wash
marketing
and
concept. It
slosh.
was very, very successful.
Yeah, no, it was good. So how did you get to, like, we met in Vancouver. So how'd you get
Yeah, we met
to
in
Vancouver?
Vancouver. You came down to a gig I was playing at, we met at the Yale Jam session. You came down with your dad, rest his soul.
Yeah.
And so then that's where we met. I think it was at the Yale Jam session with Jack Lavin.
Yeah. Jack was just on the last night. We were talking.
I saw Jack at the. I was just doing the Nanaimo Blues Festival, and he was there and said hi to Jack. I hadn't seen him in a long time, and he looked hale and hearty. So.
Yeah,
still
I
doing
know.
his thing. He was playing the band that was playing the band right before us. So sort of
Nice.
like, hey, hi, bye kind of thing. You know,
Yeah,
your typical festival.
exactly. Yeah, see the guy for 5 minutes. So tell us how you made your way over to Vancouver.
Well, I was just thinking about that the other day. I was, you know, in my friend who played in a band in out of Winnipeg. Her name is Ellen Shirella. Now Ellen Steimel because she got married, and uh, but she was playing in a band, and they're touring all over the you know, they're a country rock band, but they had a harp player, Shaky Ray Sutter was their harp player, and I was supposed to join the band and go on tour with them, but things just didn't work out for whatever reason. And she moved out to Vancouver, and so then she was always calling me all the time, Nige, you got to get out to Vancouver. The scene is smoking hot. You're gonna love it out here. And so then I had my band going in Saskatoon, and it didn't take very long to look around and feel that, you know, that if I wanted to further my musical career, I had to get out of town.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is crazy because so many guys came out of Toontown.
Yeah, literally came out of Saskatoon. I know
Yeah.
it's the university there, and then you know you've got all those bands who would they play Winnipeg, and then they'd go and they'd play Edmonton, and right in between Winnipeg and Edmonton is Toontown. So that's where we'd you know, we see all these great bands like saw Stevie Ray Vaughan, Count Basie played there. I saw Muddy Waters there.
Wow,
You
that's
know,
crazy. Yeah, you would
oh
never
yeah, it
think
was
that they
great.
would have never think they would have got there. So what?
Yeah.
So you came out to Vancouver, and then what'd you do?
Yeah, well, that's in the spring of '88. So what happened was that we had the band together in Saskatoon, and our bass player Danny Fair, he was moving back to Vancouver. Actually, he was moving back to Victoria, and with his wife and his kids. And he was like, "Well, Nige, you got to come to. We all got to go out to Victoria. I know this booking agent. He's going to get us all these great gigs, man. You know." So it's like, it was. So Doug Blondo, who's our guitar player, and Bob Greenhour, our drummer, got in my van, and we drove to Victoria without any gigs. We had no gigs. We had nothing. We just got the hell out of Dodge, and so we got to Victoria, and of course, famously there was the booking agent had left town, and there was no gigs. We were
Oh
all starving
gosh.
to death. So then Bob, our drummer, he said he'd had enough, and he went back to Saskatoon. And Doug and I were doggedly, no way, we're not going back. So then we moved to Vancouver because we couldn't find a drummer in. Although we had a great bass player, we couldn't find a drummer in Victoria because all the drummers had split a long time ago to Vancouver. So you know, loved Victoria. You know, especially as a young guy, there was like 9 to 1 gals to guys in Victoria at the time in my age group. So I was like, hey, this is a great town, but the blues scene was slightly lacking. Yeah, so that's how we ended up in Vancouver, and then you know started making the rounds, and you know hitting the Yale Jam session, and all the hot spots, you know, and slowly but surely, you know, we met some cats and got the band rolling in Vancouver, and then you know one thing led to another, and you know started touring, you know, going back to Saskatoon, and there was a great touring circuit, as you might recall, in the late '80s into like just about the 2000s, for about 20 years, where you could play Calgary. If you left Vancouver, you could go to Calgary or Edmonton, and then you could go to Saskatoon, Winnipeg, you know, Lethbridge. There's gigs everywhere, and
Mhm.
a lot of these gigs like Saskatoon or Regina and the like were full week gigs. You know, Edmonton. So you literally could go on the road for 2 months and you know play. You know, change your your location. You know, only just 8 times in that entire time.
Yeah, I know. It was a wild time. I caught the end of it. I remember those six nighters, and you know
Yeah.
they turned into front three, back threes, and then they were back
Yeah.
threes. It slowly started to disappear. But yeah,
Yeah.
those were some good clubs. What was your favorite venue to play
Oh,
during that
there
era?
was
There were so many, I know.
there were so many venues. Every one of them was one of my favorites because there wasn't any that I really, the King Eddie in Calgary was infamous because the owner of the place refused to hire exterminators to get rid of the roaches, and so the place was like the Roach Hotel. And so that place, even though it was one of the best places to play, it was one of the worst places to stay. And as you might remember, we all stayed upstairs in the room, and
That was
unless
that was the only place in North America I took my own bed sheets to.
yeah,
I
yeah.
literally had to play there, and we always got the same room, and I always wrote the little Roach Motel in there, and I would sign it and date it. And this is when I was touring with Russell Jackson. We played there like
Yeah.
3 or 4 times a year, and then I went there one time, and somebody had wrote, "James, you need to find yourself a girl so you don't have to stay in this shithole anymore."
Well, that was why there were so many blues musicians from Chicago wound up staying in Calgary. There was a guy from Detroit, Rick Too Tall Ware, and there's a bunch of cats, and they all played the King Eddie, and they found a girlfriend, and then the girl said, "Hey, why don't you just stay?" And they were like, "Sure," I don't want to go back to Chicago. It's like,
Totally.
yeah.
They had that strip club in the back, and amateur nights on the Mondays when you'd roll into town. Those were some good times. What's one of your favorite road stories from? We're going to get a few out of you today. So, from Calgary, what's one of your favorite stories?
Oh man, my memory is very, very hazy about Calgary. One of my what one of my favorite ones was this was the one that topped them all. We got off. We were leaving. We came from Minneapolis to Calgary, and we drove. It was a blizzard the entire way, and we drove 36 hours straight, nonstop. And there's semis in the ditch and the snow drifts. It was just a hellish trip. Then we had to go across the border and the whole thing, and then we got to Calgary, and it was, I guess it was, this would be Monday, and we went to set up uh, uh, our stuff, and everything, all the PA system was all just completely screwed up, and the stage was disgusting. And so we cleaned the stage, and then before we could clean the stage, we had to fix the vacuum cleaner so we could clean the stage, and then Tony Della Croce rewired the PA system so that it worked, and then he took a blown a monitor speaker with a blown tweeter horn and paired it up with a monitor that had a blown woofer, so we could actually have monitors on the stage. Got the system all running perfectly like that. So then we played the week, and then we got back to Vancouver. The tour was over. We got back to Vancouver, and we had a great week. We got back to Vancouver, and the owner phones me up and accused me of stealing equipment out of off the stage at the King Eddie, and I was furious. I just told him what I thought of him and where he could where he could stick it. I should have sent him a bill.
Yeah, no kidding, for redoing his PA system.
Yeah, no good deed goes unpunished, right?
Ain't that the truth? Yeah. So, what would be your most memorable story, tour, expedition, situation that
You know,
most people wouldn't know about?
oh gosh, well that was one of them for sure. That was a it was, the funny thing was that I was thinking 36 hours inside a van, and I remember at one stage of the game we stopped to get some gas, and there was a truck stop. I think that Tony Della Croce was still wearing his shorts, his gym shorts, the entire time, because he just wore shorts all the time, and it was a blizzard situation, and he's getting out of the van, and he's in. He's wearing shorts, immediately the summertime Tony. And there's this one time we got back in the van, that one trip. We get back in the van, and Jeff Abel, who was playing bass with us, said, "This van smells like ass," which is entirely understandable. We got four guys inside a van for 36 hours. It's
Yeah,
like, damn. And
no
I thought
kidding.
that I held the record for the longest road trip. I was, and then I was talking to, I got to talking to Marty Binder, and he played drums. He's a great Chicago drummer, and he played with with everybody, and he was talking about his time with Junior Wells, and they got in the van and they were in Chicago. They're leaving Chicago, and the tour began in Seattle, which is just the craziest booking schedule I've ever heard in my life. So that's bad. No, so they had to drive. They had to drive to Seattle, and of course it's a blizzard, and they were in the van for 48 hours in the van to get from Chicago to Seattle.
Well, I'll say that beat me by 5 hours when I toured with
Oh yeah.
Russell. Yeah, that's insane, man. I don't envy that. My back still hurts from that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's brutal, but when you're younger, you can handle it a lot more, and just the very action of getting inside a van and going for that length of trip. Or the band leader saying, the tour starts in, and then you just name the city and it's really far away.
Yeah, and then the second gig's halfway across the country.
Yeah, exactly. But everybody was touring like that back in the day.
Yeah.
It was just, I look at all my friends' tour schedules, like Joanna Connor, she was showing them up. It just was ding, 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 like a pinball, and just like crazy. There was so much talent going across the country, so many great bands playing everywhere, that there was, it was interesting, one time we were playing at the, in Great Falls, Montana, and Sonny Rhodes was playing at another club there called the 3D Club. And so I think we might have had the night off or something like that, or he was playing. We had night off. We hadn't started our thing yet, so we went down to see Sonny, and there was Theo Brown was on drums, and Sonny starts telling stories. Now, for those of you folks who don't know Sonny Rhodes, he was a legendary Texas slide guitar player, singer, and the always has the best stories. And so we're at this club, and Sonny has got the entire table, just splitting a gut over all these roads, these stories, like, how they every time they got a van, something would happen to the van, like they were cursed, and they're talking about, I think it was Theo Brown was telling the story about how they got inside the van. They're going out for, I think it was a 9-day run. They had festivals, boom, 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 all down the west, all down the East Coast. And they did the first gig, I think it was, and then they got to they were on the road to the second gig, and they're driving in the fast lane in the freeway in the van, and the rear tire blew on the van, and the steel belt ruptured the gasoline line where the fuel tank goes down.
Oh.
There's a kind of a rubber part to it, and then that sparked a fire, and
Wow.
so this tire blows out, and then they're like, so then they manage to get over across 4 lanes of traffic, and there's an off ramp. They take the off ramp, they get out of they all jump out of the van, and Theo's in a stocking feet, and the whole van goes whoosh.
Wow.
Up in flames, and literally, like, everything they have, everything they own is inside this van. And Sonny's like, yeah, man, I lost all of my stage clothes. He had different colored outfits for every, all depending on the mood he had on that day, and we're like, oh my God, like, what happened? How'd you get out of that one? It's just like, and then I think they had to go back and play, but that was the end of that story. But man, it was like, you know, other people always had a lot better road stories than me, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, we had some good stories. I was actually when I was talking with Dave Chisholm and mentioning when I like every time I'd go down to the States, even with Russell, like I would find a little pawn shop and buy some sort of taser or whatever. I was young in those days and thought, might need some help. If I got to pack a lunch, if you get into some problems. And when I had that taser when we were on tour, we wound up at what was it, the Blue Cat in Dallas, and that sound guy just didn't like us.
Well, that was a great story. The sound guy at the Blue Cat in Dallas. Well, first of all, if you remember that we went down there, and I said to everybody in the band, watch out for Dallas, because that's where they shoot presidents and get away with it, right?
Yeah,
And it was looking like,
exactly.
oh, and so the sound tech, we roll into town. The sound tech Says, I'll be right back. I'm just going to go down the street. Just don't touch anything in the stage. Get yourself set up and right back. Right. So then the sound tech didn't return. So we're like, we're handy guys. James Badger was with us, and we're all handy, sound tech guys. So we got the microphones all around the, mic'd up all the amps and all this sort of stuff. And I think that's as far as we'd gotten. We hadn't plugged anything into the Snake or anything like that. We just literally just put mics, and then we had the cables, nicely on the on the mic stands with the cable. Like all the sound tech had to do was just run in, go clunk 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 clunk. And that's what he took umbrage to. He comes in there and said, "I told you guys not to touch anything, and here you blah, 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 blah." And he starts beaking off, and he goes, "F you guys, you're not getting any sound tonight out of me." And he took all the microphones down, and I was like, "So what are you doing?" And he goes, "Well, buddy, if you want to go settle this out back right now, if you want to fight, let's go fight right now." And I was like, "Oh man," it's like, this is too crazy. So then I went in the back to talk to the owner of the place and say, "Listen, your sound tech's lost his mind." And the owner, it was his birthday, and he was completely flat out drunk in the back of in his office, like, and he was incapable of doing anything. He was like gibberish, and I was like, oh my god, this is just craziness going on here. So then we went back on stage and we go to play, and there was one vocal microphone on the bandstand. That was
I,
all we had.
I
No
remember that.
monitors, just this PA, the one vocal microphone, and it was a big room. It was a really nice
It
room,
was.
and it was just the strangest gig ever. That
I
was
love
that the same tour that we got the potato cannon.
it. Yeah, the potato cannon, and I don't even I don't even remember what state we got that from. I just remember being in Hermosa Beach and going out the back of the club and shooting it over a cop car into the apartments, and then going, "Oh fuck, I gotta get out of here!" Like,
Well,
what odds?
we were playing in we were doing a gig we were playing in Iowa, and we went to our friend Ron Gerbeau's place for a party. We had a barbecue. I think we might have been playing the Dallas, the at Ron and Cindy Miller's place, and they had the Country Cafe in oh, not Dallas Center. That's where Ron lives. Anyway, so I went to a party and they had this barbecue going on, and they had built this potato cannon. For those of you folks who don't know what it is, you take a whole bunch of pipes that are PVC plumbing pipes, and you make this cannon out of them, with a barrel and then a chamber, and then you get an igniter out of a
It was a barbecue
barbecue, like a
starter.
gas
Yeah,
barbecue,
yeah.
and then you stuff a potato in the front of this thing, and then you open up this. You unscrew the back of it. You spray a bunch of Final Net hairspray, because Final Net's got the best punch. And then you put this thing back all together, and then and this thing, if you did it at night, that would glow with the explosion that was happening, and it would fire that potato a good ways, you know.
Yeah,
And so then we had so much fun with this, and then the guys they just gave it to us when we left. They said, "Here, you can take this with you," you know. So
yeah. They signed it.
away we went. Yeah, with the potato cannon, spreading terror across America.
Yeah, they signed that thing, and I remember coming back, and I had a sack of potatoes and a whole box of Aquanet hairspray or whatever the heck it was, right? And my buddies were like, "What the fuck is this?" Right? And I threw it in the back of a big trunk of my caddy, and we drove down to the dike, and we just shot off like 2 bags of potatoes. They thought it was the craziest thing. I just couldn't believe, like, who the fuck comes up with this idea?
Bored farm kids out in Iowa.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
was.
the funniest thing about the potato cannon was the amount of fun you could have for very little money. A sack of potatoes cost you $2 or whatever.
Yeah. Well, now it's like $200, but yeah,
Yeah.
in those days.
Well, one of my favorite ones was we went up to the height of land in when we were on touring Texas, and we went up to the height of land, um, and we were overlooking the river in Austin, and we were firing this potato cannon off this cliff and getting some serious distance off this thing. And then, yeah, but I remember you bought the taser. You got the taser in Mississippi. We were playing. We weren't playing in Mississippi. We were just on the road, and we were staying in Mississippi. We kind of had a couple of days off in between Memphis and Dallas, and we went down to do the blues tour. Checking out where Robert Johnson was from, and all that sort of stuff. And that was in a pawn shop in Mississippi that you got the taser. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I bought it for $20. I smuggled it back home and ended up selling it for like 400 to some guy. Thought I should get some more tasers.
Yeah, yeah, they were a great device, but you had to get really up close and personal with the taser, you
Oh
know.
yeah, yeah,
The police don't
definitely.
use them. They get the police are ones that shoot the darts out,
That
So
shoot 10 yards at somebody.
yeah, yeah, they'll disable you that way from afar, So it's like the taser you actually had to get club close and personal with that thing. It was a
For
pretty
sure.
fearsome device.
So, out of all the touring and places you've played, what would be your most memorable venue? And possibly, if it's different than your most memorable venue, your most memorable gig performance?
Well, I'll give you one that will live forever in infamy in my mind. We were touring Europe, and we were going to be going up and playing this big festival, um, the Oiteen Blues Festival, and it was this big gig, and it was up in the north of Germany near Hamburg, near the North Sea, and it was supposed to be 20,000 people in this square, to see this performance, right? And so we had a great slot. I can't remember if we were the last band, if we were headlining it, or we were like the second last band up. So we had a great spot. It's supposed to be 20,000 people in the square. And they had a big stage with a PA system and the whole thing, and flying PA. It was beautiful, beautiful setup. And it was raining like cats and dogs. And so it was the the day had already got off to an auspicious start when we tried to wash our clothes, and we wound up, that was a big disaster, just trying to find a place that there was no laundromats in Europe anyway. We couldn't find one, and so we went on stage. We were already a little wet from our clothes. We were quite dry, and the rain has not stopped. The rain is keeping coming down. It's coming down. It's coming down. And so then I said, well, what are we going to do? I turned to the promoter and I said, what are we going to do? And he goes, oh, you'll go on. You'll go on. I said, but I looked out in the audience and there's 8 people there instead of 20,000. There's 8 people out there huddled in ponchos, against the rain, and the wind is blowing all over these umbrellas and stuff like that. Just a howling gale. And I said, okay. So then I said, I'm looking at the stage and it's covered with water. And in Europe, the power is not 110, it's 220 or 240. And so I said to the sound guy, I said, is this going to be safe? And he goes, oh, no, don't worry. It's perfectly safe. Don't worry about a thing. So we go in the bandstand, we play our set, and the band was sounding great. I had Rob Blaine on guitar, Ilaria Lantieri on bass, and she tours with Sugar Blue, and she's badass. She also played with Eddie Clearwater, and then we had this fantastic drummer from Belgium with us, and so the band was slamming, and we were on the stage, and rain is just coming down on us, and it was like the video from a Stevie Ray Vaughan video for "Couldn't Stand the Weather," except it wasn't a fake video; it was for real. We're just drenching this thing out. But Germany was a lot of fun to tour in. Every town that we went to, we would have there would be a beer there and they'd give us all this beer. They never charge us for a beer ever, and they drink the stuff, and you just love this beer, and you get quite a buzz going on. And then the next day you move to the next town, and you play another gig at the next town, another show, and you say, do you have that beer? And they go, that beer from that town over there? Oh, that is piss vodka. This is the good stuff. And then they give you this beer, and you drink this beer, and you just be drinking this beer all night long and just having a great time. And then the next day you go down to the next town, the next show, and you say, "Do you have that beer that they had at that other town?" They go, "All that beer is piss water. You have to drink this beer." and then so this is pretty funny. So we're driving along, and we went into to a store to, I can't remember, to get some bags, a bag of potato chips or something like that. And there's a beer truck pulled out front of the store in Germany, and the guy went in there and he was taking beer out of the cooler, right? And I said to our interpreter guy who was with us, I said, "Why is he taking beer out of the beer cooler?" And he said, "Well, that's because the beer is past its prime. It's aged out, timed
It's
out."
piss water.
Yeah. And so I said, "Well, what do they do with all the beer that they take away?" And he goes, "Oh, they send it to America. You guys will take anything." Yeah.
Yeah, that's
But
almost believable.
Germany was I got along, in France and Belgium and Holland, that sort of stuff. France, places like that, I could sort of figure out what was going on. But in Germany, I was completely lost. Most people didn't speak English, and it was we had to have an interpreter with us at all times because, yeah, my German is not very good.
No, neither is mine. So now I want to ask you, because we talked about how good things were kind of late 80s, 90s. What do you think of the state of the blues world now? And I know for you, it's probably a little better. You're in the Chicago area, and things are, probably, I'm assuming, would get worse there way after it gets worse,
Right.
in a region I am.
Well, we played a great show last night at a place called Fitzgerald's nightclub, and it's a mile away from where I am in Oak Park right now, in a town called Berwyn, and it's all part of Greater Chicagoland. Chicago ends, and then Berwyn begins, and so then it goes down like that. So you literally just drive across the street and you leave Chicago and you're in Berwyn, and and so. This place was originally a sort of a dance hall, and there was another building like that was sort of a corner store, and now the corner store is a bar, and the dance hall's a bar with a stage and a PA system, and then in between the two buildings is a large patio courtyard, and there's a stage outside as well. And so last night, Tom Marker, one of the great blues DJs that they have in Chicago, he hosts the Blues Day Tuesdays once a month, and it's sponsored by WCB, which is this great FM station in this public radio station from the College of DuPage, and so they had they had this Argentinian cat named Ivan Singh, great guitar player, smoking band, and then right after that, we played our show in the sidebar, which is right next door. And so they finished, and then we started playing. And there was about 250 people outside in the patio. It's a beautiful night, just a perfect night. And then we had a ton of people came inside the bar, and we just had the best concert, it was best show, and everybody's just having a great time. So when you take it like that, yeah, there's great stuff going on as well, and I just played the West Coast. I was just out in your neck of the woods with my Vancouver band. Got a great bunch of friends out there. Dave Dykehausen on guitar, Double D everybody calls him. And Lisa Ray Simons on bass, right? And I got Scotty Hills on drums, my old touring drummer Scotty Hills on drums, and we've used Marco Ibarra in the past. We had Pete Sweetser and just had a great time. Played Frankie's, and we played the Blue Frog Studios. Just had a wonderful time with Blue Frog. So I think that the world has changed and it's evolved out of those 6 night long shows into more one nighters. You know what I mean? And so that if you can get those one nighters all going like that, then you can do well. And if you can get festivals happening with pay a lot of a lot of money, you can support a tour that way. But the way that we used to do it back in the olden days is really hard to do because the
Yeah.
clubs don't have that income that they used to.
Yeah, and when you said before, you'd go out for 2 months and you'd play 8 venues because you're doing week-long gigs. little easier logistically too to book that. And if things don't usually fall out from under you, but if you were going to go out for 2 months and play 6 different venues every week,
Oh yeah.
that's a lot of logistics, a lot of travel too.
Yeah, it's a lot of lot of schlepping gear, and I don't travel light. I've got 3 guitars with me, and I've got
Yeah,
Fender Super amp which weighs somewhere around 70 pounds. And I got my tour van, but it's literally like when we're touring in Florida, we're literally sometimes we're ping ponging across the state. You play Thursday night in on the West Coast, and then you ping pong across the state, and you play Friday night, and then on the East Coast, and then you'll drive up the East Coast and you play a Saturday show, and then literally just driving all over the place. So it's a lot
yeah,
more ping pong going on. It's really tough to get everything lined up. But
yeah,
people do it. I mean, lots of friends of mine, they're out there and they're doing really well. So but they're working their butts off doing it. So
yeah. No, absolutely. That's something I've been a little disconnected from, just because it just seems like so much work.
it is a
like,
lot of work.
forget about the playing and slugging your gear. Just logistically putting that together. That's why I miss the days of like the agents. Because when I was younger, before I started with Russell, I was, working through Notable or Feldman, and those guys took care of that shit. I was like, perfect. When that kind of died out, I was like, really?
Yeah, well, the there's still a lot of agents out there, but you just got to get with the right one. And when I released my last album, Back in Style, I had everything lined up. I had a booking agent, and out of Florida named Jim Nestor, and so I had all the ducks in the row. We had Michelle Castilia doing our publicity, so everything's going to be boom, boom, boom like this. Coming out of the pandemic. And unfortunately, Jim passed away
Hmm.
right as I was releasing my record. Like the album dropped in June, and Jim passed right in July. And so if you got the right agent, then you can make stuff happen, and they can be doing stuff while you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, right? Which is
Hmm.
driving to the next gig. But it's
Yeah.
it's things have changed. I used to do a lot of touring with a full band, and then I'd be get four cats in the band in the van, and you drive across. We used to do laps around America, right? We went out for I think it was 11 weeks, and I think at the end of the 11th week, you wrote that song that was on one of your records called "I Just Want to Go Home."
Yeah, and I literally wrote that was my yeah, because so I released that album in 2002, and I wrote half of it while we were staying at Rick Stoner's place in LA, sitting in the hot tub with
Yes.
Badger while they were filming pornos down the way. Like it was, yeah, and it was like, fuck, we've been out here forever. I just want to go home. That was like literally
Yeah,
the
well, that
title.
was we were trying to break into the LA scene, and it was, but LA was getting California. uh there wasn't that a whole lot of blues clubs, and we were playing some nice ones. We were playing Cafe Boogaloo in Hermosa Beach, and
Hmm.
that was a wonderful place.
Yep.
But then trying to get everything together, it was tough to do. And then 2000, I think then 9/11 happened, and then everything changed, and it was getting really difficult to you know and then what happened with the touring market in America, that we used to do it. We would play Toronto on a Saturday night or Friday night, and then we'd play Buffalo on Saturday night, and then you'd have Wednesday night in Angola, Indiana, and then you could go down and play the Noodle in the Slippery Noodle in Indianapolis. And that gig in Angola was a very small town, but there was an industry right next door to. There was a plant that made car parts or something. And everybody worked at this plant, and they would go to the bar, Skip's Party Place, on the Friday, Saturday night, and party to the rock and roll bands, right? All the hair bands, and then the money from that allowed the owner to indulge his passion of having blues bands on the Wednesday nights, right? So when the free trade hit, the effects of the free trade deal, what happened was those car part plants moved from towns like Angola to Mexico and then to China. So those linchpin gigs that were able to, you know, stitch a tour together and make it all profitable went away. Those middle of the week gigs, you know. So you can play Indianapolis on a Friday and Saturday. You can play Chicago on a Friday, Saturday. You know, what are you going to do for the rest of the week, right? So it's tough to do, you know.
Yeah, no, for sure. And from the coming out of the Vancouver scene, yourself and Russell Jackson were probably, I can't think of anybody else that was touring North America like that at that time. At
Yeah,
least,
phrasally.
yeah. Well, yeah, most people were just kind of more, I guess regional. Yeah, and I've done tours with you and with Nigel, but I was a little disconnected from a lot of those logistics most of the time
Oh,
because
yeah.
in the early days I was spoiled with agents and never had to deal with it. And then when I had to put my big boy pants on, in the early 2000s to do it myself. I was like, fuck this, man. No, I did not want anything to do with it, right?
It's what if you might recall that I spent most of my life on the phone, you know, and booking a tour, booking a tour would require, you know, starting at 8 months in advance. You'd literally get off the road from one tour, and I did most of my bookings myself. I had, Greg and Debbie Barrett did a lot of stuff off the bat to get things rolling, but pretty much most of it I did myself, and yeah, that's all I did was just on the phone all the time, and then later the computer, and then you know it's a difficult road to hoe, but it actually helped me come to Chicago, because if I hadn't have been invited to Chicago, and like I'm just telling people the story. In 1992 I was playing regionally, Western Canada, right? And band was touring Western Canada, and my friend Terry Bosner was really good friends with a guy named Professor Eddie Lusk, and he had a band called the Professor's Blues Review. Now Eddie, when he wasn't touring with his own band, he went on the road with Otis Rush and all these cats like that. He was a heavyweight cat. He was also Bill Murray's piano coach in Groundhog Day.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so he was quite the cat, and he started asking. Terry played him my first cassette, my EP cassette, and said, and he started listening to the singing and he started asking questions about me, and so then one thing led to another, and he invited me to Chicago to play during the blues festival with his Professor's Blues Review at a club called the River West Club, and we went on after Magic Slim. That was the deal, right? And so no pressure, right? you know, and so at the time nobody was playing Chicago unless you were like from Chicago. It was a pretty closed scene, and it was like, yeah, we got enough blues guys, we don't need it, anymore. But the folks at the River West Club liked what I did, and they invited me back in the fall to play with my band. Unfortunately, the professor passed away, and so then I came back in the fall, and he was going to open up all these doors for me because cats can do that, right?
Yep.
And so, but we went back in the fall, and we did. There was Ray Keish, George Greenwell, and Dale Diddick on drums, and we had my van, my old red van, and we had. Um, we have two new tires in the front of the van, and you know uh terrible tires in the back. We had a whole bunch of spares tires just thrown in the back of the van from a junkyard. We were blowing tires left, right, and center off this van. We went up to Thunder Bay, then we went down to Chicago, and then did a couple shows in Illinois, and then back up through Minneapolis, and then across back Western Canada. And things started to happen after that with the touring, So then I started playing further afield and longer tours, And then in 2001, I was playing at Buddy Guy's, and I met a gal, and she was a Canadian gal. She was like, so we fell in love. We had a long distance romance going, and she was either going to move to Vancouver, but I was on the road all the time anyway, or I could just move to Chicago, which was the home of the blues anyway. And so I always like to tell the joke that it wasn't really a joke at the time, but the story is that I moved to Chicago for A Woman in the Blues, and then 6 months later, all I had was the blues. So that's how I wound up moving to Chicago.
Wow. I actually didn't know the story behind that. So what's next for you? Do you have tours coming up? Do you have albums? I know you just recently you released an album.
Yeah, I released Back in Style, and I was supposed to have one sitting here, but I don't. And
I'll put it up
the
for you. Send it to me
yeah,
when we're
there you
done.
go. And we so I released the album in 2023, and basically I've been working the album since then. That's what I've been doing. Released it in
Awesome.
June of 2023, so it's just a year old, you know, and it's been doing great. It went to #1 on the contemporary U.S. blues charts, and it was a top 10 in Europe, in Australia, in Canada, and the UK, and stuff like that. So it's done really really well, and so now I've got about 20 songs in the can that I've worked on sessions I've done. And so they're, sitting in the can, and they just have to, and lately I've been going through them and trying to figure out what is going to be on the album and what's not going to be on the album. So that's what I'm doing right now. And I'm just playing shows, just my Western Canadian tour, and gearing up for winter. I'm going to be going down to Florida and doing a bunch of shows down there. And we're playing this weekend. I'm playing a place called Nick's Beer Garden in Chicago with the band. And then on Sunday, I'm right near Soldier Field. It's the opening day of the Bears, uh, Chicago Bears football season, and I'm playing a outdoors place called Boat Drinks in Burnham Harbor, acoustic with Rusty underneath the shady tree, and there's going to be wild, crazy people, football fans, all drunk from tailgating.
That's a great thing. And tailgating, for anybody from Canada watching, we don't. That's, I guess, not really a tradition up here, but in the States, tailgating is huge.
Oh yeah, it's a way of life. I mean, these
Yeah.
guys roll in. They've got like, you know, uh, uh, outdoor grills, and they got tents set up, and they got
Yep.
coolers of beer, and it's just nuts.
It, it,
It's
it,
great fun.
it is nuts. And I think, like if I went to Rogers Arena or BC Place and pulled my truck up and tailgate and barbecue and a big cooler full of beer, I'd probably wind up in the client, right? Like they wouldn't let that happen here.
You might get away with the barbecue.
Yeah, well, yeah, the barbecue, right? But
But
yeah, drinking outside, they're not usually too cool with that.
yeah, they're a little bit more relaxed about it down here in the States. It's a huge huge industry. I mean, because you've got not just major league, but you've got college football. And college football is
Huge,
massive.
huge, yeah.
Do you remember? Did you ever play Columbia, Missouri with us?
Yep, I did.
And there was a giant football stadium in Columbia, Missouri. It was bigger than anything in Canada.
I know. I
you
thought it
know,
was like the NFL stadium when I first saw it, and I didn't realize, like, college. Are you kidding me? It's like
yeah,
bigger than
college.
it's bigger than where the BC Lions play.
It's massive. It's just this massive thing. You can't believe it's that big, and you're going, "That's for college? What?" And so, all the fans of college, they all tailgate like mad too, like crazy, and it's just mayhem, you
Yeah, it
know.
is. I have a
But
buddy in Florida
they're
that tailgates.
yeah, tailgating in Florida is a little more hot and sweaty than it is up, this neck of the woods.
You don't need a parka down there.
We won't need to park it until November if you want to tailgate in November in Chicago or later in the season. It's like the playoffs are in December, January, it goes into February. So for the Super Bowl is in February. So yeah, you're gonna need a parka. It's pretty tough. I will
Nice.
not be doing my outdoor gig at that time of the year.
Nothing stays in tune. So before we head out and get off this call here, where can people buy your music? Where can they check it out?
Well, they can go to my website,
Hey, what a
nigelmack.com.
concept.
Yeah,
NigelMack.com. I'll get it up on the
that's right.
screens too. You can send me
Yeah,
any other links.
the front page, my friend William Jordan, did a nice job on the website. and you go right on the very first thing you see is a picture of the new album. You can just click on that, takes you right to Big Cartel, which is where the I guess that's called the portal to order CDs.
Yep.
And then there is also a link for Bandcamp, which is where you can download albums. And for those folks that don't know, a lot of people they they're very nice. They pay their subscriptions to Apple and Spotify and stuff like that, but they don't realize that those platforms don't share that money with the artists very well. It's infinitesimal amounts that go to the artists. So, making albums, it costs money, and
Yep.
making good albums costs even more money. And if people want to support the artists, either buy a CD or download it from Bandcamp, and that way the artist, gets the cash and
Yeah.
can keep on being artists instead of working at Burger King flipping burgers.
Yeah, I remember being at a luncheon where Bruce Allen spoke, and he said in the 80s, we toured to promote album sales.
Yeah,
Now we make albums to promote tour sales,
yeah.
which is,
But
I guess,
that's for the yeah.
yeah,
That's for the big guys. I mean, the big guns out there, the Pearl Jams and that sort of stuff, because they can sell out, like the Rolling Stones, they sold out Soldier Field, at hundreds of dollars a head, right? So, but then, you're trying to get, if you as an independent artist say, hey, listen, why don't you come and see my show? And the ticket prices are $500 a head. I
it's not
think
going to
that there
happen.
might be is not going to happen, right? So so you're touring. How are you supposed to make it work? Doing it like that, So yeah, so just go online and buy lots of albums off of all your favorite artists. And for those of you folks that don't have those folks out there that don't have a CD player, you want to buy CDs, support the artist. I don't have one either, but I have a DVD player, and so you can put CDs inside the DVD player and play it that way. I also have a disk drive for my computer, so I can listen to albums that way. And also, I always like to say that they can go on Amazon and they can buy a CD player for like $25.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, for sure. I just switched myself to just downloads now. I have a garage full of CDs that I haven't sold. Nobody has them. Like, they don't even make cars anymore with CD players in them. So it's
that was one of the that was one of the biggest crimes that was allowed to they were allowed to get away with that. They tried to get rid of the AM radios, and there's a hue and cry about that because all the folks that listen to AM radio for traffic and sports, people do listen to a lot of sports, but getting rid of CDs in cars was just a disaster for us because a lot of people would buy CDs and then they just they put them in their car, so you can't blame them, it's like they you know but the same thing. Here's an interesting story. I was talking to a teenager, and she and her friend went to New York, and there's been this big craze for vinyl, right? So they went to New York and they wanted to buy some vinyl, some used record albums, right? And but the vinyl was super expensive, right? And they were teenagers, they didn't have a lot of money, so they went and they bought CDs instead.
wow.
So yeah, so there's maybe that's a thing that's going to be happening, is that incrementally CDs are going to become cool again with the
Well,
kids,
if they do, I got like a couple thousand of them in my garage I can sell.
Well, I sell them every single night. I sold 8 last night. You know,
Yeah,
and so people still want to support artists. People still want to buy them, and people they go to Bandcamp, they get the downloads. And it's just makes them feel good because they know that they're actually supporting cats. Who are
yeah,
out there
no,
doing it.
that's a big one for sure.
Yeah, it's a great thing, and that way you sign up for people and they get this personalized thing. But what I want to do is I want to get some vinyl. I want to get some vinyl press. That's another thing that's on the table for me. But vinyl is by itself very expensive to manufacture, and so you have to have some money up front in order to get the vinyl happening. So that's we're just waiting for the tooth fairy to to make it happen.
Gotta You gotta change the 8 albums to 800 a show. Yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't sold 8 albums in the last 12 months, but I don't push them anymore. But Yeah, people do like to support, and I'll get your links up. You can send me your links, and we'll put it up, and
Yeah,
maybe we'll get
you
some
know, but you
people over
should.
there.
But you should, but if you're not going to push your own albums, James, nobody else is going to do it for you. So you got to be literally. I walk around the crowd with albums. I have them up in the air and I walk around like this,
Yeah,
right?
you've
Just big smile on my face and a drink in one hand and albums in the next. And you'd be surprised. Also, people go, "Yeah, I want that." They want to be part of that thing. And especially if they've had a couple of drinks, they're feeling a little loose.
here's
And
another
I also do
20.
I also do Venmo and I do, PayPal and and I've got QR codes that people they can get stuff that's literally just like put their phone on it and boom, they can get it. And so, I try to make it as easy as possible for people to access the music and because you never know where those things are gonna go. Like my cassette, It's the Night cassette, 5-song EP, went all the way to Chicago and landed in the ear of the professor, and that launched my whole American career,
Yeah,
touring American career. Yeah. So you never know what's going to happen, right? So push
yeah,
them.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, I appreciate you being on the show, and maybe we'll get you on again in the future.
Yeah, man, we got lots of stories. As soon as you start to, as soon as you mentioned a couple of things, it's like, oh yeah, then there's that. I could talk all night now.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, me too. But time is of the essence here for what these podcasts are turning into. But we'll definitely get you back on. I said the same thing when I talked with Jack Lavin as well. There's just endless stories, so we won't hopefully
Yeah.
bore people too much. But I know you have a lot, and we'll do it again.
And you've got a lot of stories too. We just got to pry them out of you.
Yeah, yeah, you've been part of a lot of those.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's great. It's great, and I thank you very much for doing this because this is sort of a way of getting like an oral history happening. And in storytelling, oral history is really important, right?
Absolutely.
Cultures worldwide, we rely on these oral traditions and these great stories that to keep going and get passed down, and and sometimes they get embellished with time, and some one of the guys in the band will go, you know, say one thing, and then they go, I don't remember it that way at all. It didn't
Yeah,
happen
no,
like that.
exactly. And that's why, this is like way not scripted. It's kind of just off the cuff because like you just said, you start talking and you're like, oh shit, yeah, I remember this happened. If you script it out, then it's just, people always want to see like we were sitting in a bar having beers talking.
Yeah, we don't. I don't have a beer in front of me. That's that's
I
uh,
yeah,
that's
I
that's
don't
wrong.
either. I had a whiskey on my last one, but I'm drinking some water out of a GNC, so I don't want to appear to be like some alcoholic every time I'm on here. I'm pounding beers back or something,
Well, it's a Canadian tradition.
right? For sure. But thanks again for coming on, and I will get your links offline. I'll get them up here, and then we're going to get this
Right
out to
on.
the people in the next few days.
Right on, man. Take it
Cheers.
easy and have a great one. Thank you so much.
You
Cheers.
too. Thanks. Bye.